Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is May 15th, 2017. I am Rollo McFlugel and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both of McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/39. You will find links to subscribe to the podcast and subscribe to the website, as well as like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And also, any links that we discuss will be provided there. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our topic.
All right, thank you, Rollo, and thank you, everyone, for joining. Today, we're going to talk about a local pizza shop owner in the Philadelphia area named Giuseppe Pino DiMeo. He, like I said, owns a couple pizza shops, and he was paying some of his employees under the table. The IRS raided him or went after him because he did not report $3 million in revenue over several years. And he owes the IRS about $1 million. I use owes in air quotes. So today we're going to talk about this. Rollo wrote an article on our website about it and got some comments on some different websites about it. And we found that people really like taxes, or at least say so. So Rollo, I want to discuss the morality of taxes. And just to be clear to everyone listening, we understand it's the law. We understand the Constitution says they can do it. We also pay our taxes, but I pay them for one reason and one reason only, and it's the same reason I would pay Tony Soprano if he knocked at my door and offered protection. Because if you don't pay them, they come after you. So let's talk about the morality of taxes. And Rollo, do you think Pino DiMeo is a hardened criminal?
No, I do not.
At least not based on this, right?
No, and if he's, not saying that he did, because I have no idea. I've never heard of Pino DiMeo until I saw this article the other day. But if he did something that's an actual crime where he hurt someone, then, charge him with that. But whether or not he paid his taxes should have nothing to do with whether or not you think he's a bad person.
Right. This reminds me of a similar story that happened in this area a couple years ago with Nifty 50s, that local restaurant chain, doing the same thing, paying people under the table, and that guy went away for a couple years. He might still be in jail for all I know.
Well, it's funny that I saw one comment on this was criticizing DiMeo for saying, he's not, that's really great. Oh, you think it's great that he's not paying taxes for his employees? Well, now they're not getting the government unemployment benefits paying into that. And my reaction was, if someone wanted to get paid, all right, so paying someone under the table means that you're avoiding paying taxes on them, which there's a lot of taxes associated with employing someone. And if you are employed and you get a paycheck and a pay stub, I suggest you look at, if you've never done this before, look at your pay stub and see how many taxes are being taken out. Not just the federal income tax, but also the state income tax, if your state has one, and it probably does. There's only a few that don't. And then there's the local tax. And in Philadelphia, there's also the city wage tax, which is, I think, a little over 3%. I pay it, and it is a lot of money. Plus, there's the payroll tax, there's Medicaid, and all, just you end up paying a whole big chunk of your paycheck in taxes, and that's it.
And let's not forget all the gas tax and sales tax.
Right, that you pay after that. So for Pino to say he was, I have no idea what he was paying his employees, but let's say it was $10 an hour. You get paid a whole lot more if that $10 an hour is paid under the table than if it were through the government's permission system. So his employees get paid, take home a whole lot more money. So that's good for them. If they wanted to put money away for a retirement fund, or not a retirement fund, but maybe they're paying Social Security,
which is not a retirement fund,
right? But if they wanted to put money aside for unemployment or something, then they're free to do it. But I'm pretty sure they want the cash. And most people and it goes to, in a lot of foreign countries, I know they've done this study where people make they don't get all the benefits that they do in a lot of the Western world, and there's a study. I don't know the study, but they went over there and asked the people, "What do you want? Do you want weekends off? Do you want vacation
Air
time?
conditioning in the
Right?" And
office.
they said, "No, we want the money. We don't want that spent on any of these benefits. Our biggest need right now is the money, and that's what we want." So I'm fairly certain it's the same for
If he
these
gives,
people
yeah,
too.
but shouldn't it be up to the employee? Like, well, what if you say to the employee, "Wait, I can either, as an employer, here's the deal. I will either pay you $10 an hour, or I'll pay you whatever, $9.50 or $9, and I'll put some money into an insurance policy in case you ever get laid off. You will continue to get paid," or something like that. If the employee doesn't want it, why should he be forced to have it? I always say the same thing about Social Security. What if I don't want to take Social Security? What if I want to save for my own retirement? Why should I have to do it?
Right. Or
So,
maybe if you've got something going on in your life where you need the cash right now, it shouldn't be up to someone else to say, "No, you have to prepare for your retirement."
right. But now, the question that we would, or I would often pose to people is, what right does the government have to take Pino's money? And most people would say, well, obviously it's the government. Everyone knows you pay taxes. They don't really, they haven't really thought about what I would assume, based on the answers I get, is they haven't really thought about what taxes are and what right does government to take it from you. You often get things like, yeah, well, that's the price of a civilized society, or don't you like driving on the roads or the bridges, or military, police, and all these answers. Rallo, what do you say to that when that comes up?
Well, it's kind of ironic that they say this is the price you pay for a civilized society. Because what happens to you if you don't pay taxes? They send armed men to your door to come and force it from you. I mean, they'll throw you in prison, lock you in a cage for not paying your taxes. So, how civilized is that? Is that to get people to put money
To do things that they say we all want.
right? So there's people are saying it's a very civilized system to threaten you with violence in order for you to put money where they think it should go. Because that's what it is, and you're just making it sound weird. Yeah, no, that's
No, I mean, it really is. You think about it, you have the Republicans and the Democrats, and I know people will disagree with me, but I don't think they're that different. I think you have two sides trying to force their views on the other, and so if the Democrat, well, this is a obvious example, I guess, the Democrats win, they force all the Republicans to fund their Planned Parenthood. Then the Republicans win, and they force you to fund, what's a good more military. When the left doesn't want the wars, the Republicans will increase the military budget and force them to pay for it. So to me, they're really not that far apart, and they're very similar in what they do. But that's all taxes are. It's the majority forcing their will on the others.
exactly.
And to say that's the price, and then that's a democracy, tough luck. Well, then you have to, let's go down a little further and talk about where do they get that authority from? I mean, people lived here before the U.S. government came into existence.
Right. Well, they say it's well, I don't know that people even understand what they're saying, but they claim it's the social contract.
Oh, really? So explain that to me. Do you
Well, I don't think it's a real thing, so it's tough to.
right, but the saying
yeah,
goes is that you chose to live here. So you implicitly agree to live by my rules, being the government's rules. Still,
it's begging the question that the government has the authority to begin with, or that,
right, because
that it
it's
has
the government.
ownership or something, whatever authority. But the idea is that it's the consent of the governed, that we elect representatives to do the things that we want to have done. One of them is taxation. But so what we're doing is we're delegating our individual authority to the government. That's the idea. But I can't go to Slappy's house, knock on the door, and say, "Hey, I just did something that was beneficial to you. You owe me $20." And if I put a gun to his head and took the money, that would be, people would say, oh, you're stealing, or that's extortion, or whatever it is. So how do I properly delegate that right to the government? Because that's exactly what they do. Is they provide a service, whether or not you want it or not, and then they go around and say, hey, you owe us money for this service we just provided you.
Right, whether you asked for it, used it, wanted it, or didn't.
Right.
But even so, even if it is a contract, like, so for example, I could see, let's say the U.S. government collapses and me and my neighbors get together and say, hey, we want to keep this neighborhood the way it is or whatever. We want to have certain rules to live by. Then if I wanted to sell my house to Rollo, I could say, you have to abide by these rules if you want to buy the house. And if he says yes, then sure. How's that different? How would that? First of all, do you agree with that? One, and two, is that any different than what the government's doing? That you want to live here, you have to abide by these rules.
The first question would be yes. That would be permissible. That if you set up rules and had some sort of requirement, stipulation for me purchasing the house, that I had to follow some rules in the neighborhood. Sure, that's fine because you're the owner and you get to decide what happens to the land. Now, that's not the same with the government because the government's not the owner. So let's say that you had your neighborhood and everyone decided to get together and band and form some sort of association, and you said, you know what, I don't really like the rules that they're setting up. I'm going to say no thank you. And it comes time for you to move, and you sell the house to me, and I move in, and they knock on my door and say, oh, you have to follow our rules. That would not be.
They have no right. They have no ownership of the land. Right.
Right. So, it's begging the question by a long time. Like, just because the government showed up and said, oh, you are our subjects, means that hundreds of years later they get to dictate what you can or can't do on your land and take your stuff from. Because that's what it is. They're saying, oh, well, the government's been here for a while. So what? So's the rock in my backyard. It's been there for a while, but it doesn't mean it has any authority.
Well, let me ask you another question, because the social contract talks about implied consent. What do you think about implied consent? I mean, is that possible?
Yes, it absolutely is. So implied consent is like when you go to a restaurant and you sit down and order food. It's implied you are going to pay for the food afterwards.
Yeah, you don't have to say, I'll have a ham and cheese sandwich and I'm going to pay for it.
Right. However, explicit dissent always trumps implicit consent. So if you walk into the restaurant, sit down, order your food, and say, by the way, I don't intend to pay for this, then you would be under no ethical obligation to pay for it afterwards because
assuming they brought you the sandwich anyway.
Right. Because you told it to them, you negated the implied contract that way.
Most likely they would say, all right, well, get out of my store. So right. Isn't that analogous to saying, well, if you don't like it, leave? Well,
it is their restaurant.
Right. They're the owner of the restaurant, right? So they can set the rules on their property.
Right.
But
the other thing about implied consent is that there has to be a way to get out of your situation. So let's say I got kidnapped and they brought me to the restaurant and they said, all right, what do you want to eat? And I said, I don't want to eat. And they said, no, we're giving you food. And then they bring it to me and then they say, well, you have to pay for it. And I said, well, we delivered you food, but I had no way of saying I didn't want it. No matter what I did, they were going to send me the food and make me pay for it anyway. So that's not a contract if you don't offer, if one of the parties doesn't offer the other party any way to dissent from what's going on.
Or what if they do? What if I have a party here at my house and you come over and I say, all right, everyone, I threw this party. It cost a lot of money. Everyone has to give me $40 to cover the cost. And if you don't want to, you can move out of the country.
Yeah.
And so if you stay in the country, did you then agree to pay me my $40 for my party?
No. It has to be a reasonable thing. Like, let's say that same party scenario. Although let's do it at Rollo's house because Rollo likes to throw some crazy parties.
Sure, certainly.
And so Slappy's over here, and I say, all right, if you want to stay at the party, you've got to saw your arm off. Or if you don't want to stay at the party, what am I saying? I messed this up already. See, the status logic is so weird and confusing that I can't even get my own stories right.
Yeah.
So.
No, anyone who wants a piece of pizza, saw your arm off. No one saws off their arm. Nobody gets pizza. Nobody wants pizza.
Right.
Does that work?
Sure. Like that's an absurd. And if someone went and ate pizza, to say like you have to now saw your arm off is a little bit absurd.
Right. And then the other point about this whole thing, I'll never understand why people side with the bully. I mean, clearly, all of us are just living our lives, trying to earn a living, pay our bills. The government says, you owe me this, and if not, I'm going to lock you in a cage, and everyone sides with them.
Yeah.
It's kind of, the kid at the playground, and there's a bully there. Everyone would say, stop the... No one, I mean, you might say, listen, just avoid the guy, go to the other playground, but no one would say that's the right answer. The right answer would be, bully, stop bullying.
Right.
But everyone, it seems that everybody just sides with the government, even if they claim to be Republican or small or we don't like taxes. They still always say you must pay your taxes. I think it's some kind of Stockholm syndrome going on or something.
Yeah, I don't. It's because I don't know, because I used to think that way. I used to be a Republican, a neocon, whatever you want to call it, and I used to think that it's the law. You pay your taxes. I think what it is just the obsession. Maybe obsession isn't the right word, but it's this.
Well, the idea
it's the law, and they look at it with some sort of, teary-eyed kind of thing, like the law's precious and it's important, and so we have to follow it. And there's a way to change it if we don't like it, but the law is the law.
That might be the case. I think after I just threw that out there, I kind of thought maybe the point is, or what they're saying is, look, I hate paying taxes, but I do it anyway because I have to, and so you do too.
Right.
Because I don't really. I mean, I never talk to anyone who loves the tax code.
I know.
They do follow the law like the government is God. In fact, I do think the government is a lot of people's gods. But I don't know. I don't know. I think most people hate taxes.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they think it's the right thing to do, or maybe that helps them cope better instead of saying you just got extorted. Well,
I do, and in fairness to them, I do think that most people, when they say like, "Oh, you like the roads? Do you like any number of things that the government provides?" that they've never thought about, because it's what they're used to. They've never thought about a situation where maybe the market could provide all those things. So they, in their heads, if the government doesn't provide it, which means, and they can't provide it if they're not getting tax money, then it wouldn't be there.
Yeah, in fact,
you suck it up and pay your taxes because, I like getting around from place to place with the roads.
Right, and everyone should pay and all that. And yeah, I guess I get it. Because I think most people in their mind are minarchists. Because in the sense that they don't want the government to do things that they can do on their own. So even like Democrats, they don't think the market will handle, charity or any other thing they support. They don't think the market can handle it, therefore they want government to. But if they could see a way for the market to handle these things, maybe they would be less inclined to do it. I mean, not too many people are arguing for the government to make the choices for dinner at night.
Right.
Because they can do that on their own. The market can handle it, and they can find food, and they can get what they need.
Yeah, that is a good point. I think everyone basically is a minarchist to some degree now.
In their head,
right?
Yeah.
Whether that fits the definition of the libertarian minarchist, where it's kind of the night watchman thing, it's a different story. But yeah, no one wants the government to do something that they think it shouldn't do.
That they're confident the market can handle.
Right. And whether or not they refer to the government not doing it as the market can handle, it's a moot point. But that's what it is. When the government's not doing it, it's the market doing it.
And so when I hear, well, all right, kind of switch. I mean, it's the same topic, but switching gears a little bit. Often here, it's for the common good. And usually they talk about, when you say, why do I have to pay taxes? They usually talk about roads, bridges, clean water. They conveniently leave out all the common good we're dropping in the Middle East.
Okay.
But just on the idea of common good, is what is the common good?
I don't know, because I think if you asked any given person, you're going to get a different answer each time. And why does one person or one group get to decide what the common good is over someone else?
And
I mean,
enforce everyone else to pay for it.
yeah, doesn't it seem a little bit arbitrary that it's this certain kind of common good is what is the common good, and then this way of getting to that is the correct way of getting to it? I mean, everyone has. I mean, that's why there's elections and so much energy and emotion is put into politics, because people are believe so strongly that their common good is the correct common good, and their way of getting to it is the way to get to it. So to kind of just leave it up to a vote, especially when, I mean, you look at Trump and you see all the people that absolutely hate him. And then on the flip side of that, when Obama was president, you saw all the people basically on the other side that really hated Obama. And that's the common good. I mean, you talk to a Democrat or a leftist now and you say, oh, Donald Trump's our president and we're pursuing the common good. It's, are you crazy? That's not the common good. But talk more generally about the state and they'll say, yeah, absolutely, we're pursuing the common good. Well, you can't have it both ways.
And yet all these Democrats who hate Trump are forced to pay for his programs,
Right.
which many of them think are immoral and wrong. And why should they have to pay for them? And why is it wrong to resist paying them? Morally wrong. I understand the law. I understand they're going to throw you in jail. And this is a crime, air quotes, a crime that they take very seriously and they go after and they try to drop the hammer on you, which is why I pay my taxes. But if you don't, how are you being immoral or wrong or committing a crime if you don't want to fund something that you find to be immoral, such as a war or police state or welfare or whatever you think is immoral that the government does? Why should you fund it, and why are you wrong to resist funding it?
I don't know, because I'm of your opinion that that would be absurd.
Right. And so Pino DiMeo, who knows what his motivation was? My guess is it was to avoid taxes. I don't know if he took a moral stance or not. It shouldn't matter. It's his restaurant. It's his business. It's his customers. And I think we should go after the bully and not after the victim.
Right. And if you really think that Pino DiMeo should pay his taxes because he owes you something, then go knock on his restaurant and tell him that. And say, and you take the money yourself. If you believe that is the ethical thing to do, then, don't have the middleman there. And while you're at it, knock on your neighbor's door. Tell them that they owe you something.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Pino has paid plenty of taxes.
Oh, I'm sure.
He just avoided those Social Security, FICA taxes. I'm sure he pays property taxes, sales taxes, all that other stuff. So
yeah. Yeah, I guess that's a little bit more difficult to hide, that saying that my house and where I live doesn't exist. So, yeah, like you said, I'm sure he's paid plenty of money to the
he
state.
pays for the roads through his gas tax. He pays for the schools through his property tax. So, the things the federal government's paying for, if he doesn't want them. I'm not saying he doesn't. I don't know. I didn't talk to him. I don't know him. But I see nothing immoral about not funding something you disagree with.
Absolutely. Now, the immoral part comes when you force someone to pay for stuff.
Forcing someone to pay for something is highly immoral. And not funding something you're against, I see no problem with that. Now, of course, you'll deal with the consequences, but that doesn't mean it's right. Just like if I say, Rallo, buy me a piece of pizza, and if you don't, I'll punch you in the face. Well, he might believe I'm going to punch him in the face, and that's why he buys the pizza, but it doesn't make him right for doing it. And if he doesn't, he might get punched in the face, but he's not wrong for not having bought me the piece of pizza.
Right. Buying the piece of pizza does not mean I consent to, because there's an obvious threat of force behind it.
Right.
So that's another thing that it's important to kind of get straight.
So
that's about all I have to say about this.
yeah, I think that wraps up the discussion.
Hashtag free Pino.
Free Pino. Do you have a market story?
I do, and it's a simple one. And if, for those of you who this might be your first episode listening to us, we like to end every episode with a free market success story. It's just a little story in our everyday life that, the market's all around us doing amazing things every day, every second. So we just like to take a step back and acknowledge little stories that happen with that. So my story is it's very simple and, kind of a boring thing that we do all the time, but just getting gas the other day. I had to fill up my gas tank for my tractors at home. And so I went to the gas station and just filled it up, put my credit card in, gas came right out of the pump, drove off. Very simple. I can do that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at most gas stations. And it's really not that expensive. I can buy a gallon of gas for less than I can buy a gallon of milk. And since I work at an oil refinery, so I see how much money it takes and how much effort it takes to refine a barrel of crude into some gallons of gasoline and the other products we make, and it is absolutely amazing.
Well, even beyond that, just the exploration and
Right.
researching the technology to get it out of the ground and then get it out of the ground and to wherever it goes. Does it go to the refinery from the ground? Does it go somewhere else? I don't know how that works. They refine it, then they have to ship it to wherever it goes to get to the gas station. It gets in a pump, and it's less than $2 a gallon.
Right. And even it's less than $2 a gallon. Where are you buying gas?
I use my rewards points.
Oh, nice. Well, if they didn't tax it, it would be less than $2 a gallon.
You're probably
Tax
right.
one of the many places it's taxed. At the pump, all the refiners and everyone else pay all sorts of taxes on what we do. But also, it's not even from the refineries don't even send the gasoline to the pump. It's even there's another step that most people don't even realize. It's got to get blended.
Right.
We only make the parts of the gasoline. Someone else mixes it all together. So there's just so many steps and such the amount of money it costs to do anything in the refinery is so high, but it's still able to, have a reliable product that's, there. It's always on the shelf. I mean, yeah, there was the gasoline crisis in the 70s, but I'm pretty sure that was government caused. So just something that, like I said, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, you can roll up to a gas station and buy gasoline, and it's not going to...
And they're all over the place. It's
Right.
not like there's...
With a lot of
just
choices.
one
You
somewhere.
don't like gas station X, you can go to gas station Y. Don't like that one, go to Z. So it's really shows the bounty of the market.
Absolutely.
So with that, I guess we'll say goodbye for this week. Again, the show notes page is mcflugel.com/39. We'll have the link for the article I wrote the other day about Pino and about how he should be celebrated for not paying taxes and having his employees subject to having their paychecks taxed. And also you can find links to subscribe to the podcast on either iTunes or Stitcher. Subscribe to our email list. Will also be there, and also like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And if you have anyone that might be interested in this, share it. It's kind of a local story to us. We're from the Philadelphia area, so these kinds of stories, no pun intended, but I guess it's not even a pun, but they hit closer to home for us because it basically is home for us.
Yeah.
So again, thanks for listening.
Yeah, and think about what taxes are. And we'll
Absolutely.
catch you next week.